So in science, all month we've been learning about plants. We learned about the life cycle of a plant, about seeds and how they grow, parts of a plant. We learned about some wildflowers that grow around central Texas where we live, the bluebonnets and buttercups and Indian paintbrushes and Indian blankets. I hope that you guys have been seeing some of those flowers around the roads. I've been seeing a lot of them around my neighborhood. So this week we're going to do native plants. And native plants are special plants that just grow in one area. So the native plants around central Texas where we live are going to be different from the native plants that would grow in Chicago, or the native plants that might grow in Maryland or New Mexico or somewhere else other than the area that we live. So native plants are special plants that grow naturally, are supposed to grow in an area. And native plants are important because they take a lot less water than other plants, and they provide shelter and food for the animals that live around here in the areas. The animals need those certain plants. So think about like a rainforest plant, a tropical rainforest plant. It would probably need a lot of water to survive because it rains a lot in the rainforest, right? So if you bought that plant at the store and you planted it, you'd have to use a lot of water to keep it healthy, right? And even then it might not stay healthy because it's not really supposed to grow around here. But if you buy native plants or plant native plants instead, then you're helping to save water, one of our natural resources. So that's why native plants are important. So we're gonna learn about some native plants. We had a little native plant hunt around St. Francis planned for this week, but don't worry. We are gonna send your parents a little updated native plant search, and maybe you can print it out and walk around your neighborhood. Now, I don't know what native plants are in everyone's neighborhoods, so you might not be able to find all of them, but maybe you can find some of them. Okay, I'm just gonna put a whole bunch of native plants on the search and we'll see what we can find, okay? All right, and then I thought we could read this book in science today because I know we all love this book so much. All right, it's called The Curious Garden. I'll try to scooch up a little bit. There was once a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. So look, there's nobody really outside. I think I might see the little garden right there. There's a lot of pollution in the air. Maybe that's Liam down there. Okay. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The stairwell had stopped working ages ago, and Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks. There was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely little patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he'd expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew he could help. So he returned to the railway the next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. So at first he watered too much, he didn't know how much. He pruned too much, that's when you cut off some branches. He didn't know how to do that, but he learned and he got better. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway. So now look at the railway. Wow. So these pages don't have any pictures, but you can still learn a lot from the illustrations. Liam looks really happy. The air looks cleaner. I see maybe birds and butterflies and different pollinators around. Wow. Look, I see all sorts of different kind of flowers. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. So there he is up there, he's looking up at his plants. So all the plants are under the snow, but if they're native plants and if they're supposed to grow in this area, then the stems and the leaves will die because of the cold weather and the snow, but the roots will still be alive underground. So then when the snow melts, the snow turns to water, right? When it melts, and then it waters all the roots underground, and that signals the roots, oh, it might be spring. It's time to come up and grow again, grow stems and leaves. So another reason why native plants are important. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. So look, he's getting materials, he's reading books about plants. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken its toll on the garden. So look, a lot of the stems and the leaves died because of the cold winter weather, but the roots are still alive underground. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. So this always happens in the winter, but then in the springtime, they come back. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. So a plant, that looks like a vine. It's a long, tall plant. It wouldn't be a good spot on a stop sign, right? Because then cars wouldn't be able to read the stop sign. People wouldn't be able to read it when they were driving. And a fire hydrant, firefighters need to be able to get to those, right? Others mysteriously popped up all at once. Oh, it looks like Liam is leaving little plant presents for his neighbors, or maybe starting new gardens. Look how mysterious he's trying to be. But the most surprising thing that popped up were all the new gardeners. So look at that. There's all sorts of new gardeners and people realizing that they're so much happier outside with plants. Sometimes it makes us happy to take care of something like a plant and watch it grow. So again, there's no words on these pictures, only illustrations, but you can still learn a lot from them. People are walking outside barefoot. They're having picnics. They look so happy. They're playing outside. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. So do you think, let's see, let's look at the picture at the end of the city. Wow, look how much nicer their community looks because of all the gardens and plants. Let's compare it to the picture in the beginning of what their community looked like in the beginning before they had plants. Oh my goodness, very dreary. look how much happier it looks at the end. And I noticed this big tree. I wonder if that's the same little tree from the beginning. I wonder if that's the same one that grew so much bigger because he took care of it. All right, look out for that native plant search. You can do it with your family this week.